Hello again everyone. Welcome to the video on the third of the IELTS speaking criteria, Grammatical Range and Accuracy, or GRA. I still think that sounds scary. GRA sounds scary, but it asks us to consider a simple question. Can you speak correctly using a variety of grammatical structures or not? Alright, so how do you get a high score in it? A band 9 score. How many self-referential jokes do you plan on making? As many as I can get away with. For a high GRA score in IELTS, candidates need to use lots of different tenses and patterns as well. There's a lot of text to describe this criteria, but no specific forms and structures are mentioned, which makes it difficult to work out exactly what is expected, unless we use our tried and tested pattern-seeking technique. The words which appear most often are range, complex and simple, flexibility, errors, slips, and mistakes. Let's look at them in closer detail. Range refers to the number of different tenses and structures that are used by candidates in their test. If you only use present simple, then your range will be considered quite low. If you use examples of past and present tense along with conditional sentences and more, the range will be considered greater.
Simple sounds easy.
Simple can mean different things in different contexts in IELTS. It can refer to present and past simple, or the most basic tenses, such as, well, like I said, present and past simple, going to, present continuous. These are less complex than, well, past perfect continuous, conditionals, relative and subordinate clauses. These are all considered to be more complex for obvious reasons. There is no clear categorization of these forms, but the greater the variety used, the more likely you are to achieve high marks for complexity. Using language flexibly means that the different structures are used for different purposes. This can include using present continuous to describe actions happening in the present, or for describing future arrangements with other people. While the range of language is important, it is also critical to use it accurately. There are different levels of accuracy. Errors happen when a candidate shows no knowledge of how to use structures correctly. For example, constantly misusing articles like a, an, and the. Mistakes are less serious, but still consistent enough to show a lack of understanding of a structure. Slips are issues that candidates have with language after showing they can use it mostly successfully. Small and rare slips and mistakes are not considered serious since no one has a perfect grasp of English, and this is not expected in IELTS. However, if errors happen consistently with many different structures, this will affect your score for GRA. As the name would suggest, candidates need to show a range of structures, so using as many as possible will be useful. All tenses, aspects and structures you have been taught will be needed for a high score. Let's compare these two sentences about the same topic. I like playing the guitar. It's very fun and it keeps me busy. I've been playing the guitar for a while now, and it's always been something I found fun. I'm definitely kept busy when I have one in my hands. In the first example, there is some variety, but there could be more. The second example has greater variety with perfect aspect, passive voice, and more for a higher score. Do not worry about repeating the same structures, but be aware of how they can be used for different purposes. For example, you can use conditional structures to introduce topics rather than always in the middle of a discussion to illustrate an example. It's an interesting question. If I like something, I usually want to know more about it. If you'd asked me that question when I was younger, I think I would have said no. Now though, if I like something, I usually want to know more about it. While there are obviously no slips, mistakes, or errors that can be recommended, it's helpful to know what kinds of these could be used to determine the level of a candidate. Obviously, almost no errors is evidence that you should get a band 8 or 9, but for a band 7, it would be helpful to avoid errors with the third person present simple s or articles. So how can we build up the range and improve the accuracy? It would be difficult to ensure an appropriate range, balance of simplicity and complexity, flexibility and elimination of errors in grammar for your score without a person dedicated to this job, an English teacher. With this in mind, it is useful to use all means available to improve a GRA score. speaking clubs, mock tests with feedback, classes, and other ways of doing this. Now let's move on to the last of the speaking criteria, pronunciation.